What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Tigo FC. My name is Tigo, and today I want to be doing a video where we're basically going to go through and have a discussion about every Premier League summer business, my thoughts on that business that they have had and the business that they have done, and just kind of, like I said, have a little bit of a discussion about these teams and everything like that. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. The ranking system is pretty simple. S being the best, F being the worst, and your normal grade school kind of conversations on that front. And so let's not waste any time. Jump right in. We're going to start with Bournemouth, and Bournemouth are an interesting conversation to have, right? Because Bournemouth is the team that have made the most money in terms of like net spend in this summer transfer window in the Premier League. I believe that they walked away with a little over 100 million euros in terms of like total money that the club made. And I think a couple of big wins for Bournemouth is that, one, you were able to keep a lot of your goal scorers and really key players in the midfield. I thought for sure that a player like Scott or Adam Brooks was going to leave, or at least have interest from some other teams. I really like the performances that they put in last year. I also thought that there was I did not think that they were going to be able to hold on to Semenyo and Evan Nielsen and even Tavernier, but they did. They were able to hold on to almost all of their midfield and forward talent, and especially like the super key and important ones. And I think even more important is that they were able to keep a hold of Andoni Areola, which is huge for them. But where the questions are going to have to be asked about Bournemouth is, okay, what are you going to do about the outgoings in defense? You lost 4 of your back 5 if you include the goalkeeper. And Milos Kerkez going to Liverpool, Dean Howson going to Real Madrid, Ilya Zabani going to PSG, and Kepa not being able to solidify that, loan into a permanent move. He's off to Arsenal. And they were able to go out and bring in some really interesting players that I do like. And like Adrien Truffert, the new left back that was brought in to replace Milos Kerkez, has already started the league on fire. I think that they got an upgrade in the goal with Petrovic. I think he's better than Arrizabalaga. And then going out and getting like Diakite and the kid from Zvezda. Oh man, I can't pronounce his name. Like, they went out and they were able to get a bunch of these players that are like going to help stabilize Bournemouth. But I am a little bit disappointed that they didn't go out and do more. I think you have a really good manager. I think you have a really good squad. And I think that they can really push for the top of the table, and not supporting your manager a little bit more really offended me. But ultimately, it's good business. I'm going to put Bournemouth at a B because I think that they've done really good stuff. Next is Crystal Palace, and I don't know, man. I understand the lack of what kind of happened in Crystal Palace, and I get it. You lost Eberiche Eze, and that's a big deal. And you were able to hold on to Glasner by holding on to Gahey. But I feel like all of these things that are going on with Crystal Palace are of their own doing. And if your manager is already at a point where he's basically saying, like, I'm willing to walk out on this, you've got bigger problems and bigger things going on there. And look, going out and getting Jeremy Pino, he was being touted as like a wonder kid a couple years ago, and like I think that that's good business. And I think really holding on to a lot of the players and a majority of the team is good business, because Crystal Palace was a formidable team and you've kept Oliver Glasner. But I think by not going out and doing more in the summer transfer window and actually spending and being a team that has aspiration, or at least showing, like not just saying it, but showing that you're a team that has aspirations to do more, I look at some of these clubs in the Premier League who have managers that are on the hot seat that might not be here in November. Is Oliver Glasner not the first call you make? And if you are Oliver Glasner, do you not go and take that job and go to a team that is willing to spend and invest in the project? Manchester United have they're financially in a pickle, and they still went out and supported Ruben Amorim with over 200 million pounds of signings just to fix the front three. And Oliver Glasner wins them 2 trophies in a single season, builds up this team, has this opportunity for you to you can make 100 million in one go, in one summer in sales, sell Eberiche Eze, sell Mark Gahey, then go out there all summer and recruit, bring in a ton of players, load up, make a run, stay in Europe, and become an established top 8, top 10 side in the Premier League that is constantly competing for European spots. That's what this summer should have been for Crystal Palace, and it wasn't. And again, I'm kind of disappointed because the whole club did that. And so I'm going to put Crystal Palace as a D. I just don't necessarily love what they have done. And so, yeah. Moving on to Everton. Everton, I actually really like what Everton has done this transfer window. I like a lot of the loans and stuff that they brought in. I think going out and getting Jack Grealish, I think that's smart business because you're putting him in a situation where he's a big fish in a small pond, and the team can play through him, and you're already starting to see the benefits of that. Now the question just becomes, can Jack Grealish stay healthy throughout the entire season? But I also really like the other signings that they have done. Tyler Dibling is a really, really good signing for the future. Love that. Tierno Barney, Shrewsbury Hall, Alcaraz, Osnu. These are all signings of players that probably weren't good enough for the big clubs that these guys were at in terms of Osnu and Shrewsbury Hall, or even Jack Grealish, but they are more than good enough players for a team like Everton, who is trying to, one, have a good season in their new stadium, but also get back into the conversation of being a top 8 club that's pushing for cup trophies, that's pushing for Europe, that is in and around that conversation. And a lot of these players, I think Shrewsbury Hall is a phenomenal business. Tierno Barry is phenomenal business. It's just ultimately, they really, really, really strengthened their squad this summer, and I thought they did really, really well. And they took some big swings on some players that are going to be boom or bust, but that's what you got to do. If you want to succeed, if you want to win, you got to take risks, and that's what Everton did. I'm going to put Everton as my first team in A because I really like the business that they have done, and you're not exasperating your PSR stuff. Yeah, 110 million in net spend, but you can work around that. You can make that work out in the long term, and especially if your team is good enough to get to Europe next year, which I think that Everton might be pushing for those spots, and we'll see. Moving on, Wolves. Man, it's not a good summer for Wolves. It's just not, because when I look at this Wolves team, when I look at what's happening with this Wolves team, they lost a lot of really, really important players for their team. Mateus Cunha going to Manchester United, Ait-Nouri going to Man City, Fabio Silva going to Borussia Dortmund, Guedes going to Real Sociedad, just Semedo to Fenerbahce. He walked away on a free, but still going and losing a lot of those players. And then you have a conversation about the players that they brought in, and it's just okay, cool. You finalized the deal for Strand Larson. You gotta love that move, But if they were barely able to survive last year with Mateus Cunha and Ryan Ait-Nouri and some of the guys that they had on that team last year, and they go out and they get players that don't have Premier League experience, aren't Premier League proven, I have this concern that Wolves are going to go down. I have this concern that we might see a year in terms of the teams in the Premier League where we've had this conversation in the past, right? Where the teams that come up just automatically go down. Is this going to be one of those years where not only does a team stay up, do two teams stay up? Because Wolves have not done enough in this summer transfer window to justify believing that they're going to be safe. And just like Crystal Palace, if you're Wolves, or more importantly, if you're Vitor Pereira, who's done an exceptional job with Wolves, and when you took over for them in the summer, if another Premier League club comes calling, if another bigger club comes calling, do you not go, yeah, let's go? Because Vitor Pereira has been a manager everywhere, right? In Germany, in Brazil, in Turkey, in the Premier League now, in Portugal, obviously, because he's from Portugal. And he's done, in Greece, and he's done a really good job at all of those places. And the turnaround that he was able to have with Wolves was outstanding. And you can't blame him for the squad that he has, because I'm almost positive he wouldn't want to have sold Mateus Cunha, but he did. He had to. Mateus Cunha wanted out, and rightfully so. A bigger club came calling. I look at that and I go, if you're Manchester United and you do end up having to sack Amorim, is Vitor Pereira not the perfect replacement? Can play a 3-4-3. You have a bunch of players that are used to playing in a 3-4-3, is familiar with one of your new superstars in Mateus Cunha and knows how to get the best out of him, right? Is that not one of the conversations? Is that not one of the people that you go after, as well as Oliver Glasser, who knows how to play in a back three, and now you've built this team to be able to play? I don't know. We'll see. Wolves, though, I think are going to be my first team that I'm going to have an F ranking on. I just don't think they've done enough this summer. I don't think that they've done really anything this summer, and I think that is a little bit concerning. You haven't done enough to replace the players that you've lost. And even with those really good players, you weren't good enough. So what does that mean now? Scary, scary stuff if you're a Wolves fan. Let's see what happens. West Ham United is another interesting conversation because West Ham... Okay, Edison Alvarez goes and he goes to Fenerbahce. Aguerd goes to Marseille. Kudus goes to Tottenham Hotspur. Those are some pretty important players, in specifically like Alvarez and Kudus, right? Those are big and important pieces to that team. And then you go out and you get Jean-Claire Todibo. I think that that's an excellent bit of business. Going and getting Kyle Walker-Peters on a free, I think that is an excellent bit of business. Going and getting Mads Hermansen to upgrade at goalkeeper, I think that that is an excellent bit of business. And they've got other things that they did. Mateus Fernandez, Diouf, Callum Wilson, Igor Julio. Like, they brought in players that I think are going to help this team. But I think ultimately the biggest problem that West Ham have is not necessarily the players on the pitch. It's the manager's leading. It's the manager that's leading the players. And while I like the business that they've done, none of this business is going to do anything to change the perception of West Ham as a lower mid-table team. They didn't go out and get goals, which is something that I think that they need. And I just ultimately, like, this sucks because I'm going to hold something against, like, I'm going to hold against you the fact that Graham Potter is leading your team. Because I just don't have this belief in Graham Potter at all. And so, like, the season hasn't been kind. 1 win, 2 losses, 8 goals conceded. That's concerning if you're West Ham. And it's not like West Ham have had, like, an insane set of fixtures, right? It's Nottingham Forest, it's Wolves, it's Chelsea. Okay, lose to Chelsea, fine. 5-1 to Chelsea, that's concerning. Lose to Wolves in the cup early days, 3-2. Okay, it's a cup game. I'm with you. That's fine. Absolutely battered Nottingham Forest. Love that for them. But starting the season, 3-0 to Sunderland. I don't know where to put them because, like, part of me is just like, you kept Graham Potter, that's an F. But also, like, I like the sign. I'm going to put them in D. Again, do I love the business that they have done? No. Yes. But, I'm sorry, I do love the business that they've done. I like it a lot. I think it's good business, especially for a team like West Ham. However, all of that being said, you couldn't find an upgrade to Graham Potter? Couldn't do that? Like, there were good managers out there. Try to convince, like, West Ham's not like a poor club. They got money. So, go out there. Can you imagine if West Ham went out and got Iraola this summer? How good West Ham could theoretically be? Again, we're sitting on it too long. Manchester United absolutely dropped a bag this summer. 250 million euros in terms of net spend, but they also in terms of spend, but they also did an excellent job in getting people out the door and bringing money in. 182 million euros in sales. It's phenomenal business by Manchester United. But this is going to be the biggest concern is, one, I don't think they did enough to address super important key areas of the team. Okay, you revamped your entire attack. Awesome. Did you need to? Like, genuinely speaking, I thought if you would have just added Mateus Cunha and Benjamin Sesko, that's a phenomenal summer in the attack, right? Like, that's good business. Because you had Amad Diallo, you have Amad Diallo, you have Bruno Fernandes, you have Joshua Zirkzee, you have enough players in that 10 area and in that striker area to fill those goals. So you didn't need to go get Mbeumo. Now, that's not saying that I dislike the signing of Mbeumo. I think that's really, really good, and now you have an entire new front three. But you still don't have a right wing back, and you still don't have a midfielder that can play next to your 8, right? Which right now your midfield is Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. And I don't think that that's good for anybody. Casemiro's not good enough being in a double pivot with having all of that responsibility by himself. He's better at the base of a midfield 3. Bruno Fernandes should be closer to the goal and up the pitch, so he should probably be playing as one of those 10s, which means that you should be playing Kobe Mainu in that 8 role. And that serves everybody, right? Like, that's the best for everybody. But the problem is now you've got too many mouths to feed up top, and you're not going to spend 70 million pounds respectively on Mateus Cunha and Mbeumo and then not play them. So that means you have to play Bruno Fernandes further down the pitch, which means you then can't play Kobe Mainu. And then it still doesn't address the issue of your midfield and your right wing back, because, like, no offense, Diego Dallo is not a right wing back. He's just not. And neither is Mazraoui, if we're being honest. So the conversation comes back to, like, what are you going to do about your right wing back situation? And the midfield, like, you need a midfielder who's, like, comfortable going and getting the ball and being that defensive back line and being in that a base set of 2. Like, they should have been in the conversation and maybe loan in Joao Paulinho, like, because that might have worked for them. He is like a killer. He's gonna go get the ball, and he's not the best passer or ball progressor, but that's what you have, like, Bruno next to him for, right? And they didn't. And I don't think that this midfield is good enough. Manchester United are one of the very few teams that, like, don't play through their midfield, and I think a part of that is because they're scared to, because they don't love that pairing. And so, I don't know. Look, they got the goalkeeper. They did some good stuff. Am I going to hold them? Going into the season, I believe that they should have kept Emery, so I can't hold that against them. And even though now I might have changed my 2-minute tune, and it seems like a lot of things are going awry with Manchester United, I'm going to put Manchester United as a C because I like the signings that they made. Lamens, Mbumo, Cunha, Sesko. I like the business that they've done. But the business that they didn't do is going to be the things that we're going to look at. And it's going to be a conversation of what business did they not do because they went out and got Cunha and Mbumo? What business did they not do because they went and got Cunha, Mbumo, and Sesko? If that makes sense. So we'll see what happens there. Spurs. Okay. I'm going to be upfront here. I am a Spurs supporter. I'm wearing a Madrid kit. I'm a Real Madrid fan through and through. Hala Madrid. That's my team. But in the Prem, I would consider myself a Tottenham supporter. I have been for a very, very long time. So now that we got that out of the way, and now that you know where I'm coming from, I think Spurs absolutely killed it in this summer transfer window. There is one area on the team that I would have liked to see improved that they didn't improve. And there were a couple of players that I would have liked to see go, and they didn't go. But ultimately, I look at this business, I look at this team, and I look at what they've done. Going out and bringing in Xavi Simons, Mohamed Kudus, finalizing the deals for Kevin Danso and Matthias Tell, and turning those loans into permanent deals. Going out and finally bringing in Vuskovic and Takai, I think are really, really good bits of business. But also just, you got Thomas Frank. And it's early days. But it looks like that's been an absolutely home run of a signing, of an acquisition. He's stabilized the team. He's playing more pragmatic. And in 3 league games, we've seen 3 different systems by Thomas Frank. We've seen 3 different midfields. We've seen 3 different teams and 3 different performances. 2 of them really good. 1 of them not so good. Right? I think it's 4 games, sorry, if you include the PSG game. So I really, really like what I'm seeing. And when these players start coming back healthy, you're talking about having a plethora of options. Now, the one reason that Spurs are not going to be in an S tier, I'm going to put them in an A, is because I would have loved to have seen them address the second midfield role a little bit more. I think that the way that Thomas Frank likes to set up his midfield 3 is an attacking midfielder, a 10 that lives in the half spaces. You went and you addressed that. You got Xavi Simons. That's an excellent signing, right? Love that signing. I have receipts in text messages to prove that at the beginning of the summer, I was texting a buddy of mine and I said, Tottenham Hotspur need to do everything in their power to go and get Xavi Simons this summer. He's incredible. They should go do it. And he wants out of Leipzig. And then my buddy was like, no one wants to go to Spurs, blah, 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 blah. He's an Arsenal fan. And he was going, blah, 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 blah. And I said, look, if we can't get Xavi, fine. Then you can go get Eberiche Eze, blah, blah, blah. And they got Xavi. Awesome. Great. Yeah, love it. Right? The Mohamed Kudus signing, I was a little bit skeptical about. I was like, okay, what's the idea here? What are we going to do? And we've seen that. It's worked really well. I really like Matthias Tell. I think he's got a really, really good future. And like, you see all these things, but the midfielder that has to play next to Palhinha, right? Because you have your ball-winning midfielder. That's what Palhinha is. But what about your, like, deep-lying playmaker? Who's the guy who's going to sit in that role, progress and carry the ball forward? The pass before the pass, per se, right? Who's the guy that's going to really get the ball to Xavi, that's going to get the ball to Madison, that's going to get the ball to Kulusevski? That is something that I would have liked to address a little bit more. And then another one is I would have loved to see another fullback. Look, I love Jed Spence. He is phenomenal. And the things that he can play both sides, that's awesome. But we have 3 fullbacks on this team. It is Udogie, Porro, and Spence. And not getting another guy, I thought that we should have gone out and gotten Kyle Walker-Peters because that would have helped with the homegrown quota for the Champions League, but this is besides the point. Spurs have done excellent business, in my opinion. A-plus business. I love what they've done, and it's going to make this Spurs team really competitive in a really, really big way. And you love to see it. Moving on to Leeds. All of the newly promoted teams went out and they spent money, and they spent money in a big way. Leeds, of the 20 Premier League teams, are the 10th highest in net spend. They were able to keep a lot of the players that they wanted to keep around and all of those things. But they went out there and they went out and got legitimately good players. James Justin, Gabriel Goodmonton, Sean Longstaff, Lucas Perry, Jakob Biol, Noah Okafor, Anton Stack. Like, they went out and got players that are comfortable playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe, that have performances in the past. And Leeds are doing everything in their power to unsettle one of these Premier League teams. Now, the one concern that I have about Leeds when it comes to unsettling these Premier League teams is, well, Daniel Farke had them playing a certain system in the Championship that's not going to translate to the Premier League. You are not going to be so much better than the rest of your competition like Leeds were in the Championship last year in the Premier League. Can you adapt and be okay suffering through defense? Can you be okay when you don't have the ball? These are going to be some questions that they're going to have to answer. And look, it's early days. It kind of looks like they can. 1-1-1 doesn't really tell us anything. 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss. You got 4 points in 3 games. That's good. That's good stuff. That being said, can you keep it up over a 38-game season? That's going to be the question. But overall, I'm going to give them a B because I really like the things that they've done, and you can see that Leeds are legitimately trying everything in their power to stay in the Premier League, and I think that they've done really solid business on that front. Moving on to Burnley. Burnley is another one of those teams where I don't necessarily know how to feel, because there is this thought process in my mind of Burnley did it the right way in terms of how they got promoted. The way that they went about getting promoted is they played an incredibly sound defensive brand of football in the Championship. And the one thing that's going to translate in the Premier League from the Championship is defense. If you can be defensively sound, if you can not concede goals, you might not win games, but you sure as hell can draw them. And 38 points keeps you in the Premier League, it seems nowadays, right? And if you can squeak away a couple of wins, that's big news. And just like Leeds, Burnley went out and spent a ton of money in trying to really build up this team and keep them in really good steadings. The problem is a lot of the players that they kept or that they signed are players that were with them last year in the Championship and are just loans that they're finalizing as deals. And even though I think Armando Broja and Ugochukwu are really good signings and are going to help Burnley, I don't know if this team is good enough to stay up. Where the goal's going to come from. You don't have a lot of Premier League proven like goals. I do like the acquisition of like Kyle Walker coming in and doing that, and you know, the leadership that he brings and all of these things. But losing out on James Trafford, I think, was a big deal. CJ Egan-Riley leaving and going to Marseille, I think that was a big deal. Just, I don't know. I'm going to put them as a C because I don't hate what they've done, and I don't necessarily love what they've done. I'm kind of just, they've done some things. And now on the opposite side of the spectrum, I don't think that a team for the level of that the team is at has had a better summer than Sunderland, if we're being honest. Sunderland came in and dropped a bag. And after losing Joe Bellingham this summer to Borussia Dortmund, I started to get concerned. I was like, is Sunderland going to be another team that's just going to come up and come back down? And boy, was I wrong. They went out and got so many players. Diarra, Adingra, Lafley, Talibi, Brian Broby. I think that's a deadline day deal too. Love that. Going out and getting Granit Xhaka, Mukiele from PSG, bringing in why am I blanking on his name? Does not matter. It's not all that important. But going out and getting all of these players, like, legitimately, has anyone in the Premier League had a better summer than Sunderland? They are a newly promoted side who have been able to convince a ton of these really, really top talents to come to the Premier League, to a newly promoted side. A lot of these players giving up on European football to come and be a part of Sunderland's Premier League. Like, they might be the only team that sits in an S spot, and I think that they genuinely deserve it because they've had a phenomenal summer. And again, when you look at the players that went out, losing Joe Bellingham, I would have loved to see Joe Bellingham in the Premier League. We're not going to see it. Dude, in the first game, they put 3 past West Ham, and they looked so convincing doing it. All I'm saying is they are 2-0-1. They have 6 points. Sunderland, I think, is going to stay up. And that's big news. That's a big deal. And so, moving on to Arsenal. Man, this is the summer that Arsenal should have had last year. And they didn't. And now they're a year behind in where their project should be. And so, even though I really do like some of the signings that they have made, like, really like it, Hincapie there at the end, towards the end of the transfer window, that's just smart business. Going out and upgrading your backup goalkeeper in Arrizabalaga, again, that's just smart business. Going out and solidifying your midfield and your defense with Mosquera and Nogard, that's just good business. And I have been saying that Arsenal need to go and get a support on the right side for Saka. For how long? Right? And they go out and they get Madueke, can play both sides, is support for Saka. Great business. But then you look at the 3 big money signings that they've done this year. And Victor Gyökeres, Eberechi Eze, and Martin Zubimendi. I'm not going to say a single bad thing about Eberechi Eze. He is a phenomenal player, and he immediately comes in and solves one of the key areas of that football team in terms of what they were lacking, which is a player that can truly, truly, truly dictate in the final third. Because I don't think that Odegaard is good enough for that, and I think that Eberechi Eze is an upgrade on Odegaard in that number 10 role, in those half spaces. And if you can give him the ability to operate on either the right half space or the left half space by giving him the middle of the field and just say, go and link up with whoever it is that watch, because they're going to score a ton of goals if they do that. But I fear that that's not what they're going to do. I fear that what they're going to do is they're going to put Eberechi Eze on the left wing and have him singularly operate in that half space on the left side, on the opposite side of the field of Saka. And it's just like, no, you don't want, don't do that. You want Eze as close to Saka as possible, because those two together are going to light up the league if you let them. But, and hindsight is 2020, and you have to believe that right? Like in the Premier League, that these conversations don't just out of nowhere. Victor Gyökeres is a very interesting signing, because on paper, you got like a 60-goal scorer. But you're not going to get this amount of space if you're Victor Gyökeres in the Premier League or even in the Champions League as you did in Sporting. Because you're not going to be sitting in low blocks, going on the counter, hitting teams in transition. No. You're going to have to be the team that breaks down a low block. And so even though I think that Victor Gyökeres is going to get like 14 goals this year, how many of those goals are just going to be like penalty goals? How many of those goals are just going to be like against Wolves and, the bottom feeder teams in the Premier League and like the bottom feeder teams in the Champions League? Like, how much is he going to truly impact the team? And then I have that same conversation with Martin Zubimendi. I think that Martin Zubimendi is incredibly, incredibly good business. I think that he's a really, really good player and definitely going to help stabilize that midfield. However, I would have rather you see I would have rather seen them spend 70 million on a real, like, out and out left winger. Because what happens if you now put Eberiche Eze in between Bukayo Saka on one end and Nico Williams on the other? Like, we know that Arsenal are going to be sound defensively. And we know that. And the biggest question for Arsenal is going to be, can they score enough goals to win? We know that they're not going to concede goals. But the question has always been, in the biggest moments and in the biggest games, can you score goals? And Arsenal haven't been able to do that if it hasn't been through set pieces. Nico Williams is shown for Spain time and time again in the big moments, in the big games. He shows up. Eberiche Eze has done the same thing for Crystal Palace. So now if you add those two, like, we're on a lot of what ifs here. I'm going to put Arsenal in a B. They're going to be at the top of the B because I think that they've had a really good window, but I still feel like they didn't do enough. And Arsenal want to win a Premier League. Did you do enough to win the Premier League? I honestly don't know. I don't know. Moving on. Brighton. F. No, I'm kidding. Brighton intrigued me. Genuinely, they intrigue me. Because every year it's like 10 players out, 10 players in, and they're always making money. And you cannot hate on what Brighton do. But I'm starting to question Brighton in terms of their ambition and what they want in the long term and what they want out of their team. What do they want Brighton to be? Because this has been now a couple of years of Brighton having really good players that they sell, where I have the conversation and I look at it and I go, what would have happened if they just kept these guys? What happens if they don't sell Victor Gyökeres? What happens if they don't sell Trossard, Basuma, and Cucurella? What happens if they don't sell McAllister and Caicedo? What happens if they don't sell, João Pedro? What happens to these guys? What happens to this team if they're just able to hold on to their guys? And I get it. You got to sell some players. You got to do that thing. You got to do the whole business side of things. But what would this Brighton team look like if they just held some of their best players? Because I genuinely think that Brighton is managed so incredibly well that they have the ability to find players to turn themselves into a truly established top 7, top 6 club in the Premier League, to like be in that conversation, to like kick out one of the big 6. Manchester United have no business being in the conversation for the big 6 anymore. And according to Spurs' performances last year, like, neither should they. And Brighton is being managed incredibly well, top to bottom, from ownership down to the water boys. And I want to see more ambition from Brighton. Keep your guys. Be a team that goes out there and pushes. And they're just not doing that. I'm going to put them in a B. I think that I love their business. I love the players that they've brought in. I love the players that they got out. And Brighton are always going to do good business. And they're going to be a solid team. But I want them to want to be more than just an 8th place team. Because I think that they can be. Moving on, Liverpool. Do I have to say much about Liverpool? What a signing. You know the only reason that Liverpool's not here is because they didn't get Mark Gahey. It's genuinely it. If they would have gotten Mark Gahey, they would have addressed every single concern on that club. Oh, Kelleher leaves? Nope, they brought in Mamardashvili. They still got an excellent number 2. Oh, you know what? Trent Alexander-Arnold went to Real Madrid. Doesn't matter. Jeremy Frimpong. Oh, and Szoboszlai is now apparently playing as a right back, and he's doing it incredibly well. Oh, hey, we're also going to get Milos Kerkez. We're also going to get Florian Wirtz, and we're going to do a double swoop in the attack and get Ekitike and Alexander Isak. Like, it's just a phenomenal signing. But they didn't fix the defense. And by fix, I mean reinforce the defense, which I think is a suspect area for that team right now. That being said, Liverpool are probably going to win the league again. Like, Liverpool are probably going to win the league again. Do I have to say anything else? Like, if this team can gel, which is going to be the biggest question about them, right? Is can they gel? Watch out. Like, no one's stopping Liverpool. It's insane what they're going to do. Manchester City. Look, I want to say good things about Manchester City because literally all of the signings that they've made minus one, I'm a huge fan of. All of them, except for one, I'm a huge fan of. And the one, to be very clear, that I don't like is Donnarumma. I don't understand spending $60 million on 2 goalkeepers in one summer. Like, is not the reason that you paid for James Trafford so that you wouldn't need Donnarumma. And Donnarumma's not really all that much better than Trafford in the thing that you're worried that Trafford's not all that great at his feet. But he's young. He can get better at it, right? Donnarumma's also not good with his feet. And I think that Trafford has a much higher ceiling than Donnarumma in terms of shot stopping. So, like, would you not just want to, like, suffer through a year of James Trafford maybe making a mistake or two every once in a while in the belief that he's going to get exponentially better? Like, he's the future number 1 goalkeeper for England. So, like, there's that. But, again, I love Ryan Cherky. I love Ait-Nouri, Tijani Reinders. Like, that's such good and stout business by Manchester City. However, that defense, man. You didn't bring in a single center back? You really have that much faith in Kusanov to operate back there? John Stones, his legs are gone. Akanji's legs are... Well, Akanji went to Inter. Like, Ake's legs are gone. Ruben Neves still got it. I'm sorry, Ruben Diaz still got it. He's still really good. And then, so is the plan to play Gavordiol at center back? Again, that would make sense. Ryan Ait-Nouri, you brought him in at left back, right? I get it. I understand. But still, I'm so concerned about this defense. And we saw it. Rodri came back. Didn't matter. Brighton won. Beat you guys. Ending that streak of a game that Rodri starts. So we know the issue isn't that they're missing Rodri, right? Which I always thought was absurd. If your team loses one player and you can't function fundamentally because you lost one player, that's a problem. There were much deeper issues, and Rodri was covering up a lot of those issues, totally, right? And same thing can be said about Real Madrid. This isn't me coming at Manchester City. Lost Jude Bellingham, and he was having a hard time, and it's just like Real Madrid fell apart. Right, last season. And it wasn't because like Jude, but it's just like you added Kylian and you lost your entire midfield. Like, and Toni Kroos was covering up so many of the mistakes for that team, and it's just like, well, you lost one of the best midfielders of all time. Can the rest of your team step up? And we learned very quickly, no, they can't, right? But Manchester City, I look at this and I go, okay, cool. Tijani Reinders, love that signing. He's going to help be there. He's going to be the guy next to Rodri. He's going to drive that ball up the field. Love it. Ryan Cherky, put him in the middle of the pitch and let him do what he does. Let him create. Let him do all of the things that you know that he can do. He's so good. Get him as many touches as possible. That's what he needs, right? Ryan Ait-Nouri, man, I said that Liverpool should go get Ryan Ait-Nouri, because I thought he was that good, and I thought that he was better than Milos Kerkez personally, and I understand why they went for Milos Kerkez, and I love this business. But like, it's just like, dude, you didn't get a right back, which is an area that you know that you need help in. You can't keep playing Ruben Neves there, right, or Diaz or whatever his name is. He's a midfielder. It's not working. And you didn't support the defense at all. Like, Manchester, you have money. Go and spend the money. But you spent $60 million on 2 goalkeepers. I don't know. I'm going to put them at C, not because I dislike their signings, because it's just the signings they didn't make. Newcastle. How happy are you as a Newcastle fan, if you are a Newcastle fan watching this, that this whole summer is just done now? That it's over. Isak's gone. Whatever, right? But outside of that, y'all have had a phenomenal summer. I'm putting y'all at A, honestly. Nick Voldemada, Elanga, Wissa, Ramsey, Thea, Ramsdale. Like, dude, this is a great summer. And if it wasn't overshadowed by the Alexander Isak drama and the fact that every player that Newcastle apparently or seemingly was in on went to a different team, this is an excellent summer. An excellent summer. Voltemade is being touted as the possible future of that German attack, and I think that he can be. And you guys have shown a track record of being able to develop attacking players. Bringing in Ilanga, Wissa, and Ramsey. Oh, your attack is just transformed in such a positive way, and you didn't lose outside of Alexander Isak, like players that you sit here and you go, they're screwed. And I think that the really good thing is that by going out and getting Ramsey, Wissa, and Ilanga, you've brought in Premier League proven talent, Premier League proven ability, players that can go out there and score goals, and it's going to take the pressure off of Voltemada. He doesn't need to come in and be a 20-goal scorer in his first year. Look, 10 goals this season, I think that that's manageable. I think that that's a good starting point. But he doesn't need to be Alexander Isak in year one. That's an unrealistic expectation, and Newcastle have done a good job of not setting that expectation on him. So the fans just need to do a good job and not set that expectation on him. But I love what they've done. Chelsea. I'm going to do Chelsea last because I have some things to say about Chelsea. Fulham, because I want to do Fulham now. Fulham goes right into F. You didn't do anything. Nothing. You have zero ambition. Just nothing. I like Fulham. And Marco Silva's a good manager. And we're going to have another conversation about like managers that we were talking about before, where it's just like, cool. If you're a team that fires your manager, do you not go look at what Marco Silva has done at Fulham and bring him in? Because you haven't done anything. A team that was mid-table last year, you finished 11th, is just not going to do anything. You're not going to bring in any players that are going to impact that team. You're not going to show any ambition. And you don't even have the excuse that Crystal Palace had, which was they were fighting all summer through, UEFA stuff, and they're trying to figure out a new owner and yada, yada. No, you don't have any of those excuses. You had all summer to go out there and recruit, and you brought in Kevin from Shakhtar Donetsk. That's it. Show some ambition. Show some respect for the club and go out there and try to get better. You don't even have any of the excuses that some of these other teams that are going to end up in this F spot that they have. Wolves have conceded. I think that they understand they lost the key players. They're not going to stay up. They're just, we're going to get relegated probably. And they've just conceded to that point, and they're making moves to make as much money as possible so that they can retool in the championship, make a push back up, and hopefully stay up again. But, Fulham is not that at all. You didn't lose your manager. You didn't lose your nothing. You're not suffering from PSR rules, but you did nothing. It's disappointing. It's disappointing. Because I like Fulham, and I want Fulham to do well, and they have shown zero ambition to do anything. Anything. And moving on to a team that has shown ambition, I'm very pleased with the results of what they have done. Nottingham Forest, man. If what's the name of the owner? Why I can see his face. Give me a second. If Nuno Espirito Santo, why did I say it like that? I know how to say his name. If Nuno can, Marinakis, thank you. If Nuno and Marinakis can put aside their differences and stop being childish little girls, Nottingham Forest have had a phenomenal summer. Going out and making sales of some of these players, getting them out of the door, players that they weren't going to use, that they weren't going to need, and all of those things, and going out and getting Zinchenko, Omari Hutchinson, Ndoye, Kalumwendu, James McAtee. I love a lot of the business. Igor Jesus. A lot of the business that they have done. Chef's kiss. And all they need to do at this point is just not let it fall apart because of internal politics and BS. But because we're starting to see some of this, I'm gonna put them in an A. I think it's phenomenal business. This is what a lot of these teams that I was talking about showing ambition should have done. Marinakis saw an opportunity. No one had Nottingham Forest not just finishing in the top 7 and in European football. No one had Nottingham Forest not getting relegated, including myself. We all thought they were going down. They didn't. They finished to top half of the table with a phenomenal performance last year. They kept a lot of the players that they wanted to keep. Look, they lost some guys, but they kept a lot of the players that they wanted to keep, and they went out and they strengthened, and they went out and they spent a ton of money. And Nottingham Forest are at a net $109 million euros spent this year, and they're showing ambition. And Forest see an opportunity to be a top 7, top 8 club consistently, and they are pouncing on it. Now, all they have to do is keep the politics out of the game and watch out, because Forest is going to be back in European competition regularly, and Nottingham Forest might win another European Cup before Arsenal do, and that's saying something. Aston Villa. Oh, Aston Villa. I got to put them in F. I have to put them in F. I don't have a choice. I can't not put Aston Villa in F, because Aston Villa haven't done any business that moved the needle at all. Harvey Elliott, love that loan. Outside of that, nothing that they have done has impressed me. Jadon Sancho doesn't move the needle at all, in my opinion. Lindelof doesn't move the needle at all, in my opinion. Bizot doesn't move the needle. Guessen doesn't move the needle. And look, I get it. I understand why Aston Villa are here in F. They're fighting with PSR. They're trying to stay with the rules and with doing all the things and yada, yada, yada. I get all of that. But you just have this concern that if you're Unai Emery, who I think is an excellent coach, are you really going to sit here having to penny pinch, trying to figure things out with a club that right now isn't good enough to win Champions League or Premier Leagues or domestic, because they're not, and your players keep getting a year older? If a club comes calling, do you not just want to go to that club where they have the money, where they have some ambition? And I'm not saying Aston Villa don't have the ambition, but they just can't because of the PSR. It's this weird limbo with Aston Villa, which is just like, this is a big enough club that they should be doing things, and they can't. Not that they don't want to, they can't. And that is going to have a massive trickle-down effect to the rest of the club for a long time. Look, Barcelona can go out there and not be able to spend any money and not be able to register players, but Barcelona are still winning. There's a difference. Aston Villa aren't winning. So what's the deal there? What's going to happen there? So, I don't know. And now on to Brentford. Brentford, another F. I hate to do this to Brentford. But the biggest F is obviously you lost Thomas Frank. You've replaced Thomas Frank with, give me a second because I don't remember his name, with the manager that was there, and he's going to try to do those things. Keith Andrews, thank you very much. But it almost seems like to me that Brentford have kind of resigned to the fact that they understand that they are probably going to get relegated. They're going down. Because, okay, you finalized the deal for Michael Coyote. That's good business. Like that a lot. Kelleher, that's really, really good business, because sending Flecken away and getting Kelleher, that's awesome. But you're not going to... You can't lose your captain and your 2 best goal scorers in Wissa and Mbumo and not be affected, especially when you also lose your manager. And I don't want to wish bad upon Brentford because I kind of, now that Spurs have Thomas Frank, I watched a lot of Brentford games from last year to learn about Thomas Frank, and I kind of like the players there and the club and their situation and their story, and I want the Bees to stay up. But like 45-year-old Jordan Henderson is going to be the thing that's going to help you stay up. That's the move. You know what I mean? I don't know. F is too harsh. D. Put them in D. No, but they didn't do anything. They didn't replace. Yeah, no, it's got to be F. I'm sorry. Chelsea. I don't know what to do with Chelsea here. Because on one end, you have Chelsea's business in terms of selling this summer. Just that, S tier. In terms of sales. Chelsea have shown the rest of the world how you go and operate the transfer business, the transfer market. That's what they've shown with their sales and with their business. They've shown the world this is how you operate. But then you look at some of their signings and you go, ooh, João Pedro, ooh, Joel Hato, ooh, Estevão, ooh, Dario Isugo. And you go, and then you go, hey, Jamie Gittins and Alejandro Garnacho. Huh? Okay. I guess. And then you go, oh, Buonanotte and Estevão? And João Pedro? And Liam Delap? Okay. Oh, and you got Kendry Páez and Mamadou Sarr and Dario Isugo. And let's not forget that Andrés Santos also came in this summer from Strasbourg, and you're just like, huh? Chelsea are going to sit at a C because ultimately there are some moves that I look at with them and I go, what's the plan here? What's the goal here? What are we trying to do here in terms of, like, you still didn't go out and get a center back, right? The defense is struggling. Why is Mark Gahey not a Chelsea player? Like, that doesn't make sense. You have the money. He wanted to leave. You could have gone early and given £40 million, and they would have taken that deal instantly. And you could have had Mark Gahey in your central line, and that would have been a massive upgrade. Goalkeepers were available. You're not going to sit here and convince me that Sanchez is a Premier League winning goalkeeper. You're just not. And then why are you getting Jamie Gittins, Alejandro Garnacho in the same transfer window that you also got Estevão and João Pedro? Why did I say it like that? It's João Pedro. Nossa. Like, it's weird. Because I like the business that they've done. Maybe C is a little too harsh. I'm going to put them at B. I like the business that they've done. I like the things that they've done. I think Joel Hato is such a stout piece of business. Love that signing. Estevão, Liam Delap, and João Pedro are phenomenal pieces of business. But then, like, okay, Jamie Gittins, cool. Support on the left wing. More support on the left wing on Garnacho. What's happening? Explain to me why you needed to loan in Buonanotte. Explain that one. I don't understand. But whatever. Guys, this is my list. This is my rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear more from you guys. My name is Tigo. This is my football channel. Thanks for hitting the subscribe button. Thanks for hanging around all this time. Get on out of here.